The US military was just placed on high alert as a historic, jaw-dropping peace treaty is being finalized behind closed doors. Just hours after intelligence exposed a desperate Iranian plot to assassinate members of President's family in revenge for their fallen commander, the White House abruptly cancelled military leaves and prepared for an imminent massive bombing campaign. But instead of bombs dropping, a shockwave peace proposal just leaked from inside the regime, the Iranian regime. Iran is reportedly ready to surrender its highly enriched nuclear stockpile and open up the Strait of Hormuz. But still, critics inside the United States are warning that this is a trap. So today, let's get into exactly what this new deal is, why Iranians are celebrating, and why people inside of the United States are actually warning about the peace. Let's start with how this weekend started, because Washington was screaming something was about to happen before any of these peace terms actually went public. First, we had President Trump skipping a family wedding to stay in the White House. People started wondering what this meant. Then we had a report from CBS News saying that US service members were having their leaves canceled for the Memorial Weekend. US was likely preparing for a military action. We also had reports coming out of Pentagon saying that strike packages were being prepared to give the president more options in case there is no deal. And then, on Friday, news broke that Iran had been actively trying to assassinate Trump's family members. This was in retaliation for Trump assassinating Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian commander that Trump assassinated back in 2019. Take a listen to this report.
Trump was allegedly the target of an assassination plot by a suspected terrorist who was a member of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The trained Iraqi national who was taken into custody last week allegedly made a pledge to kill Ivanka and had a blueprint of her Florida home. This was in response to the killing of Iranian military chief Qasem Soleimani. A source telling the New York Post that the suspect said this, quote, "We need to kill Ivanka to burn down the house of Trump the way he burned down our house." According to the DOJ, the terror suspect has been behind attacks on multiple U.S. and Jewish targets. He was arrested and brought to the U.S. to face multiple terrorism-related charges. And one person is dead and
So that's the backdrop. The world was bracing for renewed strikes, and instead, on yesterday, we got 3 Iranian officials basically confirming that there's a deal that no one is expecting. And the details of this deal, well, no one has confirmed that either. Now, the first thing we need to understand before we get into all these details is that every detail that we are hearing is coming from Tehran. That's important because Iran wants to control the narrative, and the White House is kinda letting them do it because we're not really hearing anything from the White House. So, when you hear all these terms, remember, Iran has a track record of lying, and they lie a lot. In fact, this channel alone has gotten millions of views on shorts, just debunking Iranian lies and Iranian misinformation and AI imagery that they publish to make it seem like they're winning. Now here's the thing though, I would have just ignored this. In fact, I ignore a lot of things that Iranian media puts out. But this time we have former cabinet officials, sitting senators, and other politicians publicly talking about this deal. So, this leak definitely has some substance to it. We don't know if this is the entire story or just partial story. But first, let's get into the terms and then we'll talk about what it means. But nonetheless, let's get into the details. First, we had President Trump himself confirm that negotiations are happening. On Truth Social, he stated that he has spoken with nearly every single leader in the Middle East and that an agreement has been largely negotiated, subject to finalization between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, this is something that might be important. Trump has never before referred to Iran as Islamic Republic of Iran. He would usually call them the terrorist regime or the Iranian regime. But this time it looks like he's using a bit more of a formal language, so maybe a deal is close. Or maybe this could be me just overthinking. I do have a habit of doing that, but nonetheless, this is the first time Trump has used official language for Iran, so I thought it was worth pointing out. Then after this statement, we had New York Times and Wall Street Journal both confirmed that Gulf leaders, more specifically leaders from Qatar, Saudi, and the UAE, were pushing Washington to sign some kind of deal because they do not want to go back to war restarting. The Gulf just suffered through 2 months of intercepted missiles, drone strikes on their nuclear plants, and of course their oil infrastructure being set on fire. So they want to stop that bleeding and they want the Strait of Hormuz to open back up. So let's get into this deal that they are pushing. Here's the details. Take a look. According to 3 Iranian officials, Iran has agreed to a memorandum of understanding that would halt all fighting, including in Lebanon, and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. In return, the US naval blockade will be lifted, commercial traffic will flow freely. Iran has also agreed to not charge a transit fee, and critically, the nuclear question, the entire reason for why this war started, will get pushed back to a follow-up negotiation that will take place within 30 to 60 days after this MOU has been signed. And on top of all this, Iran is saying that they're going to get $25 billion in frozen Iranian assets that will be released to the Islamic Republic after this deal. So those are the conditions that Iran is saying the deal consists of. And if this is true, this is going to be pretty embarrassing because think about it. Only thing Iran is really giving up is the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to open it back up. They're going to stop their terrorist attacks. And in return, Iran is getting sanctions relief. It's also getting $25 billion. And best of all, they don't really have to negotiate any nuclear stuff right now. Now, of course, this is coming from Iran, so it doesn't really mean much. But the important thing here is that Iranian officials started celebrating very quickly and very publicly. Take a look. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson posted this statement, and this was actually the only statement that we had from an official that came out on Saturday. The post reads, "In the Roman mind, Rome was undisputed center of the world. Yet the Iranians shattered that illusion when Marcus Julius Philippus marched east against Persia. The campaign did not result in Roman victory. It ended in a peace established on Sanninian terms. The emperor had to come to terms with that." I guess this was his indirect way of saying that a peace deal is coming. But here's what's interesting. The picture is talking about something entirely different. The image is actually talking about a war that took place in 2060 AD, while the text is talking about a war that took place roughly 16 years before that. Now, this is important because the image is talking about Iranian adversary being defeated, while the text is talking about just a negotiated settlement. So Iran is sending double messages, basically saying they won the war, when in reality, it could not be further from the truth. But before we get into more details that we have from the US side, let's look at how some people reacted to this. Take a look at Mike Pompeo. He's the former Secretary of State. He very publicly said that if these terms are real, then US should just restart the war immediately. There's no point in giving up everything US has achieved so far. Then we had Senator Roger Wickers. He's the senior senator on armed services, and he called this deal a disaster that would undo everything that has been accomplished during Operation Epic Fury. Then we also had Senator Lindsey Graham saying the same thing, and also Senator Ted Cruz echoing the same message. Two things to keep in mind here. This is the main reason why I'm sharing you guys the details that are coming out of Iran, because in all reality, this could be Iranian propaganda, but we have some high-level, high-ranking officials here in the United States taking this deal very seriously and maybe trying to put pressure on the administration publicly to not accept something like this. The second point to keep in mind here is that all these senators and other former officials likely don't have the real details. They're going off of the same reporting that you and I are seeing. So there's a good chance that the real details are very different than what we are reading. But I thought it was important to share. Now, after I started recording this video, we actually had more details come out from the US side. Take a look. Someone from the White House actually talked anonymously to New York Times, and that's the same outlet that initially put out Iranian conditions from this deal. According to this report, 2 US officials confirmed that one element of the proposed agreement is an apparent commitment by Iran to give up its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. The official said proposal does not settle precisely how Iran would give it up, but the details will get pushed back to a follow-up talks later. But the general commitment in writing that Iran agrees to surrender the uranium is reportedly in the framework. Now, it's very easy to assume why Iranians don't want this detail being made public, because last time they were close to agreeing to something like this, which was, I think, a month ago. There were literal protests happening from pro-IRGC forces and supporters in Tehran. These people who support the regime did not want Iran to give up the uranium. So it makes sense if they agree to something like this, they want to keep it on the down low. But that's pretty much the entire story. So this is the whole story. Iran is publicly saying that uranium question is something they'll discuss later. but US officials are saying that Iran has already committed to giving up the uranium. Now, of course, both cannot be true. Someone has to be lying, and depending on who's lying, it could have some big implications. If Iran is lying just to make itself look stronger in front of the domestic public, well, that's manageable, and that's probably something US does not care about. The deal will probably work. But if US officials are trying to spin a deal that's actually not as strong as they're claiming, well, that's going to have some big implications, not just domestically because we have midterms coming up, but it's also going to have big implications internationally because a lot of allies who depend on the United States are probably going to take heed of what the US is doing right now. And as if this all wasn't bad enough and confusing enough, we also have a statement coming out of Pakistan from the Pakistani Prime Minister, and that statement basically says that, hey, there is no deal so far. And it's important to remember that Pakistan is the main mediator between Iran and the United States. And there are a lot of people who are criticizing Pakistan for failing as a mediator. But remember, guys, mediation is a very hard job. The US tried mediating a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, and we got nowhere. So even if Pakistan fails in, making sure these negotiations succeed, that's kind of expected. One thing the US does not want is Pakistan acting as an Iranian agent like Oman was doing before this war started. So that's something that would be worse than Pakistan actually failing in negotiations. But nonetheless, let's take a look at this statement. I congratulate President Trump on his extraordinary efforts to pursue peace and for holding a very useful, productive telephone call earlier today. Field Marshal Saeed Asim Munir represented Pakistan in the call, and I greatly appreciate his tireless efforts. The discussions provided a useful opportunity to exchange views on current regional situation and how to move the ongoing peace efforts forward to bring lasting peace in the region. Pakistan will continue its peace efforts with utmost sincerity and hope to host the next round of talks very soon. Reading a statement like that, and of course reading other statements that Pakistan has put out previously, sometimes I do get a feeling that Pakistan is more focused on having some kind of peace talks in Islamabad, likely because they love all the attention. Last time we had a peace talk or a peace meeting in Islamabad, the whole world was watching the city, so they really want that to repeat. But nonetheless, that's not a big deal as long as they succeed. That's all I have for you guys. My name is Sam, and I'll see you in the next one. Now, to understand why Iran is behaving the way it's behaving right now, we have to go back and look at how Iran got to where it is today. That doesn't just mean going back to 1979 when the Islamic Revolution took place. In fact, we have to go further back to when the Qajar dynasty was ruling Iran in the 19th century and look at how the decisions the ruling class made back then still affects Iran to this very day. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we're doing in our multi-part podcast that just came out today. So if you're someone who's interested in the history of Iran and how we got to where we are today, definitely go check it out. You can watch it by clicking the links in the description, or you can just watch it by clicking the end screen on your screen, basically clicking the video that's on your screen.